Let's be real, people lie more than you think. And it's not always strangers who you suspect. It could be friends, partners, or even someone in their family. Well, like to think we're good at spotting lies. But the truth is we often ignore red flags because we want to trust those close to us. I've been there. I thought I was a great judge of character until I found out someone I trusted had been lying to me for a month. The problem wasn't that I couldn't see the signs, it was that I chose to ignore them. They were right in front of me, the little changes in their actions, the exaggerated excuses, the defensiveness. But I had convinced myself it was nothing. The truth is people lie all the time, and the sooner you accept that, the sooner you pay the bills. So if you're ready to clear your head and face reality, these are the undeniable signs for you. You see you're being snarky, be prepared because it might affect you more than you think. Don't be quick to change the subject. Have you ever had a conversation where someone dodged your questions so quickly that you felt like they were playing a verbal dodge? You bring up something important that might be a topic you really care about, and suddenly, boom, they are on a completely different topic. It's like they always have an escape route, and as soon as things get too real, they disappear into the safety of a completely unrelated topic. Let me share a personal story. I was in a relationship where this happened constantly and honestly. At first, I didn't even realize it whenever I brought up future plans. Simple things like where we wanted to be in a year or how we would handle difficult issues. They immediately steered the conversation to a completely unrelated topic, like what we should have for dinner or what random thing they saw on Instagram that day. It was practically confidential, and I let it go because I didn't want to end up too much. I convinced myself they just weren't ready for the conversation, or maybe I was being too harsh, but this was something they were never available for. And it was a sign of something much deeper, so just avoiding a topic and avoiding responsibility. This brings me to the point of contention. People don't just change the subject because they're forgetful or distracted. They do it because facing the truth is uncomfortable, and many people would rather avoid it than face reality. And we let they get away with it because we don't want to seem like we're perfecting the process. We like to maintain peace, even if it means letting leaves slip through the cracks. But this is where we go wrong. Avoiding a difficult conversation is not about avoiding conflict. It means inviting dishonesty. This is the deeper message when someone quickly changes the subject. It is not just about avoiding, it's about refusing to engage with the truth. It is a sign that they value their comfort over your clarity. And what does that say about the foundation of your relationship? Whether it is a partner, friend, or even co-worker, a lie doesn't always come in the form of a white lies. Sometimes it is a subtleties, a change in conversation. We think the only lies worth condemning are the ones that are told, but the lies that are not told are the ones that slowly erode trust piece in pieces. I realized this the hard way every time I allowed the conversation to change. I silently accepted the avoidance of they give them a cover to keep me in the dark. I want to believe everything is okay. So I let the subject change, but that is the danger of letting people steer the conversation away. The truth is not just the subject is avoided, but the integrity of the relationship is damaged. So here's what I have learned. Don't let people off the hook when they try to change the subject. It's not about confrontation. It's about setting a standard for honesty. If someone values you, they will face difficult conversations, no matter how uncomfortable they are. And if they don't, it might be to ask yourself what kind of relationship you are really building. Because the truth, however difficult, builds stronger bonds than any carefully crafted lie will listen to. Understand not to respond. Listening is one of the most underrated skills in the art of seduction, but it is the foundation for making people feel truly special. The problem is most of us, we don't really listen. We wait for our turn to speak. We're so busy crafting our next great response that we miss the opportunity to really listen to what someone is saying. And that is the quickest way to make someone feel invisible. This is a controversial truth. If I are not listening to understand, then you are wasting your time. I have been guilty of this myself, sitting in conversations, nodding in agreement, pretending to participate, but inside I am preparing my next point. And guess what? People feel that they know when you are just waiting for your turn to speak. It doesn't make them feel valued, it makes them feel taken advantage of. It isn't charm, it is selfish. But when you really listen to understand, then you are not only showing respect to that person, you are also build a deeper relationship than just surface chit-chat. You are giving them the space to be heard without the pressure of back and forth debate. I remember one time I was talking to a colleague who was clearly going through a difficult time. My natural instinct was to jump in and offer advice to solve their problem, but instead I stopped and just listened. No interjection, no advice, just pure attention. And you know what happened? They even opened up because they felt safe at the end of the conversation during the conversation. They told me that I had never felt so listened to. That was the moment I realized. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just listen. This is the deeper message in a world full of noise. Listening is a rare gift indeed. People don't want constant advice or opinions. They want understanding. They want to feel like someone understands them. And when you can give that gift, you immediately become someone who cares. That's the real charm. So stop listening, just respond. Listen to understand. That's how you create people feel truly seen and valued. And that's where the real magic of connection happens. 3. Defensiveness without reason. Ever ask someone a simple, harmless question, and they respond as if you've accused them of a crime, like, hey, did you get the last slice of pizza? And suddenly they start monologuing about how they would never do something like that. And how dare you suggest such a thing? It's an overreaction, as if they've been caught doing something much worse than just eating the last slice of pizza. That's what I call defensiveness. Without reason is a big red flag that I'm hiding something. Let me tell you a story. I was once in a group project situation and one of my teammates started acting strange. Every time I asked for an update about his work, I would ask, "Oh, how was the report?" A pretty standard question, right? But he would immediately go on the defensive and say things like, "Why do you always think I'm lazy? I worked so hard, I don't need to be like that." Micromanaging. This is the same guy who spent most of our meetings scrolling through his phone. Mind you, it wasn't long before we found out he was barely doing any of his work and tried to hide it the whole time. That's the controversial part. People who get so defensive when they have nothing to worry about are usually the ones who are guilty of something. It's classic bulldog. I've learned from experience that when someone reacts this way, it's a good time to take a step back and consider the bigger picture. What are they trying to protect so desperately? Because if someone was truly innocent or had nothing to hide, they wouldn't feel the need to turn a casual question into an attack on their character. Honest people are calm and straightforward. Guilty people are always on high alert, as if they are waiting for the hammer to fall. The deeper message here is about understanding human nature. When people act defensively for no reason, it is their guilt that is speaking, not their integrity. And you have to be brave enough to realize that their overreaction is not because you are being unreasonable. It is because they're trying to stop you from discovering the truth. They are like a house that locks every door but pretends nothing is happening while you have the key, and they hope you never try to open the door. And this is what is really telling. When we ignore these defensive reactions, well, at least to flourish, thrive. We teach people that they can get away with lying by making us feel bad for even asking. But the point is not to be rude or intrusive. It is to value honesty over comfort. People will twist themselves. So avoid being caught lying, and defensiveness is just one of their tactics. So next time someone gets ridiculously defensive about an uncalled for question, don't back down. Be curious, push a little harder, because 9 times out of 10 their response is a smokescreen for the truth, and you deserve better than living behind that smokescreen for the details. You've been hearing someone tell a story, and it's so perfectly constructed, it feels like it was rehearsed for an Oscar-worthy performance. Every detail is perfectly placed, the timing is perfect. And this story flows so seamlessly, it almost feels too good to be true. Guess what? Maybe I've seen this happen more times than not. I want to admit there is a guy. Now let's call him Jake, who can tell stories like noone else. I'm talking about stories that have the kind of cinematic flair you'd expect from a Hollywood script. On a time he told us about a business deal that was supposed to be done, and he described every moment, as if he was showing us a play from a James Bond movie. Everything was going so smoothly until the exact moment he signed the contract, and how he sealed the deal with a firm handshake looking out at the city skyline. You could almost hear the soundtrack playing in the background. The real issue is messy life doesn't follow a script, and when someone's story sounds like they've rehearsed for a TED Talk, your lie detector must be going off. Turns out, Jake exaggerated half and made up the other half outright. But this is the controversial part. Most people don't like to point out the overpolished details because, let's face it, while like a good story, we like to hear neat stories that are catchy and matic. So ignore even when our intuition tells us something is wrong, and that's exactly how Lars get away with it. They feed on our need for a neat story. We want the story to make sense, clean and digestible. The messiness of the truth is inconvenient. But life isn't always perfect, and when someone's story is too smoothie, you're probably listening to fiction, not truth. Now it gets deep. When someone adds too much detail, they are not just trying to impress you, they are trying to control the story. They want you to believe a version of events that is crafted exactly to their advantage, like they are the director, the writer and star of their own movie, and you are just the audience expected to clap without question. But that is when you need to step back and realize that perfection does not exist in real life. I learned this the hard way as I started digging deeper into Jake's stories. Whenever I asked for a little more detail, things would start to unravel. The sharp edges of his story would blur, and suddenly what was a perfect success story became a clumsy mess. That is the thing about liars, is they can rehearse, but they can't handle follow-up questions. The details in real life are chaotic, and when someone is too smooth, it is a sign they are creating a fantasy instead of telling the truth. The deeper message here: life is complicated, messy, and full of imperfections, and it is a good thing when someone tries to present you with a story where every detail is perfect, there is now it's wrong, and everything fits together. They are selling you an illusion, and if you believe it, you're doing yourself a disservice, because real trust and real relationships are not built on fairy tales. They are built on raw honesty, even if it's uncomfortable. So next time you hear someone telling you a story that is a little too polished, don't just sit back and enjoy the show. Ask questions, dig deeper. The truth is really messy, and if someone isn't willing to show you the imperfections, then they aren't showing you the truth at all. Remember, life doesn't have to be like that. Perfect to be honest, and anyone who pretends otherwise is probably hiding something they don't want you to see. 5 bodies turned away from you. Have you ever noticed when someone's body leans away from you, even when they're talking directly to you? It's like their words are saying, "Hey, I'm engaged," but their body is screaming, "I'd rather be anywhere else right now." It's one of those subtle, almost sneaky signals that people don't think you'll notice, but trust me, it says a lot. Let me give you a real-life example. I used to have a friend who, whenever we got into a deeper conversation, he would slightly shift his body away. At first, I thought maybe it was just the way he was sitting, maybe he was uncomfortable. But the more it happened, the more I realized that whenever we brought up something personal or uncomfortable, his body would start to turn away, as if he was trying to avoid the conversation. I didn't. It takes a psychology degree to realize that something is wrong. Eventually, I found out he had lied about a few things. Nothing major, but still enough to break some of the trust this body had known before his words were revealed. This is where the argument comes. And a lot of people will disregard body language, thinking it doesn't matter or overthink it. That's when they are wrong. Your body doesn't lie like your words. When someone turns away from you, even a little, it's like their subconscious is trying to distance themselves from the truth. And the worst part is most of us ignore these signs because we don't want to face them. They can mean we convince ourselves it's just habit or no big deal. But let's be realistic. If someone keeps their distance from you, it's a warning sign. It may not always be a blatant lie, but it's definitely a sign that something is wrong. And this is the deeper point: when people can't face you directly, it's not just comfort but confrontation. They don't want to face the reality of the situation, and their body language is betraying them before they realize it. I used to ignore these signs, thinking maybe I was reading too much into it. But after seeing it happen many times, I have learned that when someone turns away from you in the middle of a conversation, they are not just doing it because they are nervous. They are subconsciously trying to avoid being seen completely, because deep down they're hiding something. The real message here is that body language doesn't just happen in a vacuum. If someone's body is turned away when they are speaking, it is a sign that they are uncomfortable with what is being discussed. They may be trying to hide themselves, not from you, but the truth they don't want to reveal. Like they think if they turn away, maybe they can escape your ability to see through. I will tell you what I have learned from all this: don't ignore these signs. You definitely have. It can be embarrassing to realize and even more embarrassing to state, but body language is one of the most thing to push you towards honesty. And if someone can't handle it, that you have to ask yourself what they are really hiding behind those laughs. There is a deeper message here about emotional maturity. When people laugh at serious topics, they are signaling that they are not ready, or worst, don't want to have an honest conversation. It's like they are putting a shinny joke facade on something they know they can't explain. It could be out of fear of being hurt, or it could be because they know if they actually talk about it, they will expose the truth they have tried to bury. I have seen this pattern time and time again. People use humor as a distraction to make you feel like you are the one taking things too seriously. But let me tell you, there is nothing wrong with taking seriously, especially when it comes to important issues. And if someone laughs, don't be afraid to call them out. Why this is funny, or a simple question that can expose the underlying discomfort they're trying to hide. The real issue when laughing the serious topic is that it closes the conversation before it can even begin. It is like putting a giant no entry sign in the way of real communication, and if you don't address it, then the important conversations you need to have about relationships. Trust responsibility will never happen. Everything just stays on the surface and nothing gets resolved. This is the deeper message. Honesty is not always fun, not always light, and not something to laugh at if someone can't accept these serious things seriously. It's not just them avoiding a conversation, it's them avoiding real connection and truth. And if they can't face those difficult topics with you, how much can you really trust them? Next time someone laughs at a serious conversation, don't let it go. Ask the hard questions, emphasize the uncomfortable truth, because of the noise. Laughing can lighten the moment, but it doesn't take away the weight of what's really going on underneath. If they're not willing to let go of the action, you've got your answer. They're not being honest with you. See even ambiguities when pressed for details. Have you ever had that moment where you ask someone for details, and suddenly they turn into a poet full of ambiguities and flashy gestures, but no real information? You rest them for details, dates, names, facts, and they give you a bunch of nonsense around the issue as if they're dancing in a fog. It's one of the most annoying things, but it's also a big red flag if someone can't give you straight information. The answer when pressed, they are probably hiding something. Let me give you an example from my own life. Ion's had a colleague who was always talking about the big deals they were about to sign, but whenever someone asked for more details, like which company they were working with or how far the negotiations had progressed, it became an art of avoidance. Oh, we're only in the early stages. Some really interesting conversations are happening. Can't say too much right now, but that's important. Weeks will go and we will ask again, and it's the same song and dance. Eventually we find out that not only was there no deal, he was making up half the conversation she was laying in. The hope none would dig any deeper. This is the controversial part of IAL, when someone gets vague when you ask for details. It's not just that they are being secretive, they are lying. Let's call it what it is. Vagueness is your best friend of liars because it allows them to shirk responsibility, like trying to catch smoke with their bare hands. You think you are getting somewhere, but they keep dodging with half answers and convoluted responses. They bet you are too polite or too distracted to push them harder. Here's the thing. Honest people don't need to hide behind ambiguity. They can give you clear answers because they have nothing to defend. If you ask them for details, they will give you the information straight. No dancing, no smoke, no mirrors. But as liars, they thrive in the gray area. They know that the more vague they are, the harder it is for you to pin them down. Down there is classic avoidance behavior, and most people fall for it because we've been trained not to push too hard, like we don't want to be rude or need an answer. Now let's be real for a second. We've all been in situations where we've been vague, right? Maybe we weren't prepared, maybe we felt cornered, or maybe we just don't want to admit that we don't know something. But here's the difference. An honest person will admit it. I'm not sure right now. Or I need to check that. That's much different than giving you a bunch of bullshit information just to sound like they're in control. The problem arises when people deliberately use ambiguity to avoid being found out. There's a deep message here about integrity and trust. When someone doesn't give you a direct answer, they're undermining the foundation of trust in your relationship, whether it's personal or professional, and that's bad. Especially since they are counting on your good nature not to push them too hard. They are counting on you. The answer when pressed, they are probably hiding something. Let me give you an example from my own life. Ion's had a colleague who was always talking about the big deals they were about to sign, but whenever someone asked for more details, like which company they were working with or how far the negotiations had progressed, it became an art of avoidance. Oh, we're only in the early stages. Some really interesting conversations are happening. Can't say too much right now, but that's important. Weeks will go by and we will ask again. And it's the same song and dance. Eventually we find out that not only was there no deal, he was making up half the conversation she was laying in. The hope none would dig any deeper. This is the controversial part of IAL. When someone gets vague when you ask for details, it's not just that they are being secretive. They are lying. Let's call it what it is. Vagueness is your best friend of liars because it allows them to shirk responsibility, like trying to catch smoke with their bare hands. You think you are getting somewhere, but they keep dodging with half answers and convoluted responses. They bet you are too polite or too distracted to push them harder. Here is the thing. Honest people don't need to hide behind ambiguity. They can give you clear answers because they have nothing to defend. If you ask them for details, they will give you the information straight. No dancing, no smoke, no mirrors. But as liars, they thrive in the gray area. They know that the more vague they are, the harder it is for you to pin them down. Down there is classic avoidance behavior, and most people fall for it because we've been trained not to push too hard. Like we don't want to be rude or need an answer. Now let's be real for a second. We've all been in situations where we've been vague, right? Maybe we weren't prepared. Maybe we felt cornered. Or maybe we just don't want to admit that we don't know something, but here's the difference. An honest person will admit it. I'm not sure, right? Now we're in need to check that that's much different than giving you a bunch of bullshit information just to sound like they're in control. The problem arises when people deliberately use ambiguity to avoid being found out. There's a deep message here about integrity and trust. When someone doesn't give you a direct answer, they're undermining the foundation of trust in your relationship, whether it's personal or professional, and that's bad. Especially since they are counting on your good nature not to push them too hard. They are counting on you.